Hello, I'm Natalie from Hospital Rooms. I'm a project curator here and I'm one of the organisers of the Digital Art School. I'm joined today by my colleague Tim, and today we're going to be taking you through this wonderful session with Abigail Reynolds. Just a couple of housekeeping notes before we get going. The session is being recorded, but the only things that are being recorded are our cameras and Abigail's. We're going to be uploading this onto our YouTube channel in the next couple of days. So if you miss anything today, don't worry, you can watch it later on. We've also already recorded a tutorial with Abigail, which you can watch right now. So you can finish this and then you can go and watch that right away. So we're really thrilled to be here today. New sort of term of the art school. We've been going for a few months now, and the next 6 sessions are being supported by Seasalt Cornwall, who are a clothing brand based in Cornwall, and they've been an incredible supporter of Hospital Rooms for the last couple of years, working with us on projects, really championing Cornish artists and working with them on projects. And Abigail is one of the artists that we were privileged enough to work with on a project late last year in Plymouth at a unit called Greenfields. And all of the artists over the next 6 weeks live and work in Cornwall, and we're really excited to be taking you into their studios and showing new kinds of workshops. So we're really looking forward to it, and big thanks for Seasalt for supporting us. So to introduce ourselves, if you're new here, we at Hospital Rooms transform inpatient mental health units with contemporary art. I'll take you here. This is actually one of the projects that we worked with in Plymouth late last year with an artist called Nicola Beeling, and it's a huge oil painting that we commissioned for a psychotherapy recovery centre. So that's just an idea of the kind of work that we do. This here is work by Abigail Reynolds, who's leading today's workshop. Abigail lives in St Just, and she has a studio at Porthmeor Studios in St Ives. If any of you have been lucky enough to go there, it's possibly one of the most beautiful places in the UK. She works across collage, sculpture and architectural intervention. And in 2016, Abigail was awarded the BMW Art Journey prize to travel to lost libraries across the Silk Road. And this is the work that Abigail did at Greenfields, which was an amazing, well, it was a sort of a smoking shelter, which she completely transformed. So we're really excited for Abigail to be with us today. And she's going to be taking us through the way that she works with collage and creating space. And she can tell us more about that. So as always, if you have questions, just pop them in the Q&A and Tim is going to be answering those. And then we love to see your artwork. So please upload it and we're going to pop it in our online gallery. But I am going to now hand over to Abigail. So thank you. Oh, hang on, stopping my share. And thank you so much, Abigail. Over to you.
Thank you, Natalie. So welcome everybody to my studio. And as Natalie said, I'm just going to be thinking about collage, just using images from books, which is the way I most often work. And you should have had the opportunity to print off some images that we can work on today, and they'll be the same as the images I'm using from the book I've got here. Or you can use any photographic image or anything really that you like, because we're just going to do some very simple techniques to open up space, create space in those images and sort of have a bit of an imaginative journey with them. But before we get started on thinking about paper and photographs, I just want us to think about our hands. So this is something just to sort of bring you a bit into your body, bring you a bit sort of into the same space as me. And I'd like you to just rub your hands together over each other. So you're just thinking about your hands, thinking about touch. Sometimes I do this with my eyes closed, and I just find it a really nice way to come to my hands. We're going to be folding paper and tearing paper to just open up spaces in these book pages. So just to kind of start a session, just with a different kind of way of being. I just find it really nice to kind of rub my hands. So actually my hands are really cold, so it also feels quite good to warm them up a bit. It's a bit cold in my studio. It faces out onto the beach, so I can feel the breeze coming through the windows a little bit. So let's get started with just thinking about some images that I found in books. I'm working on this book today. This is just a really huge book, so it's very easy to kind of see. So here we've got just a photograph of this stairway, the grand stairway. And I just picked this image because it's got a very clear structure. It's sort of an invitation to walk through. It's got some very, you know, I can imagine myself going up these stairs. It's got a very clear sense of structure inside the image. And what I did is just make some copies of this so that I can start to think about what I could do with this photograph. And what I did also is I sent a PDF, so you should have these images that you can access if you want to. And I also printed them off sometimes in negative. So you can see that one exactly fits over, so it becomes a very dark image. That's just on a piece of tracing paper. That's the same image. And then I just printed off some in some really bright colors to just give us a contrast. So you can print them off onto any paper that you like. So thinking about what I might do. So let's just take let's just take one of the really bright yellow printouts. So here, if I want to change this image, I could take a pair of scissors and cut it up, but I am going to just do very simple tears. So to do this, and this would be good for everybody to just practice. So just take a piece of paper. It doesn't matter if it's printed on or not for this. And we're just going to practice making a really straight tear in the paper. So looking at this image, I'm actually going to start already making some decisions. And I really like this diagonal line going straight through the image. So I'm going to take that as my starting point and just start by folding the paper over kind of along that line. So if you were to just take a piece of paper, fold it in any way you like, and I'm just going to use the back of my fingernail, which is just maybe a habit of mine, to just press that down really well. And then if I open it out, that fold is really well creased there. And I'm going to turn it over and just do the same on the other side. So if you turn the paper over and just turn it and fold it down the other way, and again, just make sure that's a nice tight crease. And then in order to tear this easily, I'm actually going to come to the edge of the table here because I find it easier. So you might want to bring your piece of paper to the edge of the table and just line it up along the side of the table, because that might make it a bit easier then. I'm just moving around here to just start to open out. Oh, now I've got a tricky bit of paper here. It doesn't want to do it. You might find that. Some paper is easier to tear than other paper. But there I've got a pretty okay kind of tear across there. Don't worry if your tear is a little bit ragged. Maybe you're going to prefer a kind of softer line, or you could do another one, or however you want to do it. But you can see that I've just split this image into two parts. And if I put it back over where it was, I've now got this possibility to just start to open out some space. So if I do this, it makes these columns here immensely long. So you've just opened up a huge amount of air in this photograph. Or if I maybe do something like this, so I'm taking the line of the stair, and now I've got this column here starts to line up with this another column, and I could do the same here because I've got the top of a column just here on the image. And if I maybe put it where the top of that column is, and that starts to line up. So you've kind of got the space. I'll just move my book a little bit so you can see the edge. you've got the space kind of moving past each other, almost as if it was on conveyor belts going in different directions, which I quite like. So that's just a really simple start to kind of thinking about opening up space. So if you've got, grab an image, maybe you're still working on the one that you were doing. I'm going to maybe try a different thing of taking just an image printed in different color and starting to think, you know, maybe I prefer it. Oh, actually, this one's in reverse. So this one looks really different. This almost looks like a night shot, as if this area was being lit with a really bright light and then this area is dark, which is the opposite way around to this. So that also can be kind of quite an interesting contrast. But that you don't have to keep everything the right way up. So I could also decide to just flip this over, and then you can start to kind of get the sense of the stairs. Maybe I could go that just this far down, start to get a feeling of the space flipping over. So you've got this light and dark space. So if you just take one of the images that interests you, take one that you like, and you can start to open up space in any way you like. So while you're working away, I maybe just do another one on here. This time I'm just going to do an absolutely straight down the middle tear. And just to say, it's not that I've got a very strong sense right now of the work I'm looking for. I'm just hoping to make some changes with these photographs. Maybe I can turn it directly on here. That will allow me to just start to, I'm being really distracted because I can hear drilling downstairs in the studio below me. Hopefully you can't hear it. So again, now we've got like a much bigger space. So instead of this double set of arches, I've got 4. So the space just becomes really huge and quite strange because it moves into black and white on this side. So that's just, so I think we should just keep going. I mean, what I could do is even bring this back here, and then it starts to get quite complicated. But as you can see, you can just keep going and keep going. So I think I printed out some images, and I gave you images of a different page in this book, which is this one. I really like the photographs in this book because they're very simple. It's quite an old, this book is from 1904. It's quite an old book. So now we've got a photograph here of Goodwood House. So I'll take some of my images of this one. So that's been printed, as you see, in reverse again. I think I gave you a couple of options like that. Here's one that's printed in bright orange, very different to the kind of original style of the book, because fluorescent paper obviously wasn't invented in 1904 when this book was printed. And here again, you can see it's just exactly the same size. I'm printing them off at the same size. So if you did print off in a transparent paper, this is just from a block of tracing paper. You can even do kind of interesting things where you just move the room around and you get a sense of it doubling itself and moving apart from itself, a little bit like a kind of double vision. So that's another very simple way to make changes in this quite tight environment we've got here of this ballroom, and just let it sort of, maybe it's like it can sort of float free from itself. So I wonder what will happen if I do the same thing, but on this fluorescent paper. When I press it down, it sort of can see both rooms, both representations of the room, both photographs at the same time. I even quite like the way the words Goodwood House are kind of coming through there, and the ballroom gets.
Abba, do you mind if I ask a question from someone's just asked? Are these printed on coloured paper as she doesn't have a colour printer?
These are black and white prints. I just put them through a black and white printer, or you could use a photocopier. I don't have access to a photocopier unless I went to the library. So I just went to my post office, in fact, up the road, and bought a pack of fluorescent multicolored paper. So I just found that a really easy way to get some really flat, nice color into these images. So the colors are because these are the colors that were in the pack, but I could have chosen, you know, in the newsagents, there was like pastel shades or sort of basic colors like red and yellow. And I just think it's just a nice way to change the image really simply. So you could put this into a photocopier tray, or I just put it in my printer at home. It just gives me a lot more options. And even the tracing paper you can use in the same way. You can just put it straight through your black and white printer.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so let's have a look. I'm going to just have a start to sort of collage this then. I'm just going to start with a basic white sheet, I think. I really like on this photograph, I really enjoy this very strong diagonal. So maybe I'll just fold here. I hope you're doing okay with your folds. It's something which gets easier the more that you do it, or, you know, if you do have scissors or something, you can just use scissors. I'm finding this paper tears more easily than the fluorescent. So maybe I'll, instead of just doing one, slice through this room, I'm gonna make quite a few. So there I've got some, and then maybe I'll do another one here. And then I've got lots of sections of space that can open up and start to move against each other. So getting a bit more complicated. So to make it easier for me to see, I'm going to replace the book image with this orange one that I've printed off. It's quite faint. This one's come out quite faint. And I start by just putting it all back the way it was. So it's kind of like that. So now I can start to move them apart, and you start to get these really formal portraits. And I can sort of, maybe I'll align some parts, so line it up exactly where it was, and then other parts could move away. Here I can get this top of the picture frame to kind of talk to this little cornice or whatever that's called. And I really like this. This is a really strange candelabra or chandelier, so I maybe have that twice, and then maybe I'll push this one really far out, so it starts to just get a kind of bit of a life of its own, where parts of the room are kind of breathing through other parts. So, and you know, I'm doing this in a very sort of linear way, but you could also decide to do it in a much more kind of dynamic way, where maybe you decide to line up this edge with something else in the photograph. I find that I often work like this, and I find that if you really look at the photograph, I feel like it tells me what to do with it. So there'll be something about the photograph, like the lines, and I might just follow one of those lines or start to think about the lines of the columns, and that kind of means that I feel I'm really in dialogue with the image. So if I take this one, maybe I could sort of think about lining some of them up here, or maybe that just doesn't work at all, but it's all completely flexible. So I think you should just feel really free to play around and try things out, or you could turn things upside down. Maybe it's really nice to have this this happening, where you get the corner that should be going up into the ceiling, it starts to come down, and then this starts to look like some sort of strange flower or tree in a landscape to me all of a sudden, because it's upside down. So yeah, maybe I'll turn this one upside down as well, and you get this. I really like this as well. So I feel like maybe I just really enjoy that, and maybe I'll keep the word ballroom. Maybe, I know, I think I'm going to make this even smaller. So I'm going to just tear this down again. So I'm just playing around really. I'm just sort of trying to find something in what I'm making that's interesting for me, that just seems kind of to work with this photograph in an interesting way. So I've made that even shorter, but maybe I will turn it upside down. Yeah, I think I can't decide whether I prefer it like this or just like this. I think I'm going to go for this. But you know, I've got, as you've got, what's great about this way of working is you can just print out as many copies as you want. So I printed out plenty of copies so that I don't have to feel any pressure about wrecking it, because so I think I'm going to stay with what I've got here, but I could just start again and do something completely different, and I could have 2 versions, 3 versions, 5 versions, and I tend to do that, and then I just put them all on the wall, and I just think, okay, which of these do I prefer? So that's a way where you don't have to, you can just be really uncensored and be really free, and then you can just decide later, rather than stop yourself and think, oh no, maybe that's terrible, maybe I don't like that. Just do it anyway, and you can decide later. So I'm gonna fix this one because I feel like I'm enjoying that right now. I'm not using glue, I've just got some paint here, some acrylic paint in the studio. So I'm just gonna take the lid off and just use it to fix this, so it can be a finished work and I can put it up and think about it. So I'm just gonna take the lid off, and you can see it's just, I'm just gonna use my finger because it's quicker, and just put a few dabs behind. I also like seeing this on the book page as a big, like a big frame, but that's not, that one I can't go back on because I've only got 1 copy of this. So I'm gonna just leave it like here. Just gonna find a bit of something to wipe my hands on there. So that work then, I'm gonna say is finished for me. And I'm gonna, I put some different kinds of image in, so I'll take that. I'm gonna close this book down now. This beautiful top, and I bought some other books, so putting that to one side, because I just thought it would be nice, as well as opening up interior spaces, to maybe think about landscape. So I bought 3 copies of the same book, because again, you know, I'm not tearing up very precious images. These are just images that were printed in books, so many books. So they're very cheap, and it's easy for me to buy 2. So I really like this photograph of, actually, you know, I'm going to take this off because it's getting a bit too high for me. Of this landscape here, the chalk downs at St Ives in Dorset. And I just really like the colours. So I was thinking I could take, they're slightly different. The images are slightly different. Maybe you can see one of them is more, one of them's redder. This has got more green. So I think I'm going to just tear an image out of one of them. This one. Okay. And then I can bring it back to the other book. And I'm thinking maybe it's almost like a flag, this photograph, because it's got such a strong colour here, such a strong diagonal, like kind of like a flag. So I feel like doing something quite straightforward with it. Maybe I'll just fold it so. And again, I'm just folding, scoring it down with my fingernail just to make sure it's a really good crease. Fold it back the other way. And that's tearing really easily there, look. So now I've got the possibility to go back to this image. Maybe, so this is here, but maybe I could just, maybe I could just turn it over. maybe that would be, that's something really satisfying about that. So it stops feeling like so much like a landscape, and it starts to be more abstract. So I start to sort of feel these clouds are almost more like a texture than being the clouds themselves. And these lines start to become more abstract. So there's a kind of way of just changing landscape. So I've sort of spun it round. I feel like somebody's trying to ask a question, but maybe I'm wrong. So yeah, I think I like.
I was just while you're going, could you also tell us how you present this as well? Someone's asking, how do you present your artwork when you've actually, you know, glued it down and it's sort of a finished piece?
So if you're working, when I'm working with book pages, I just very simply frame them. So I would, with this, sometimes I show work directly in the book. So in the past, I have kind of nailed the book to the wall and just had it with the overlay like this. But more usually, I take the other page out as well. And then I can make a little, use mount board, just a kind of white mount board to give them something stiff to be on. And if I was going to, because there's a lot of nice decisions you can make here. You know, would I take this page out as well? I mean, maybe I should. Let's do it. Take this one out. And then I've got no distraction of the book. And maybe I would just, I'm trying to find the exact same place because for some reason I just want to. I just enjoy that. And then maybe I would just frame this in a really simple glass frame, and that would be it. Or it could be that I feel like it needs more color. If it was a completely black and white image, I would sometimes put something behind it. So let's have a go. This is going to totally kill it because it's really a really different kind of color. But you could stage it, and then if you do that, you can see it's more obvious the kind of overlay, the way that they're moving apart from each other, because these sections become very important. So I just enjoy when you make small decisions. I mean, here it's also going on to and let's try a different one. Let's try this one. There's just endless the sort of ways you can work, which I really like. So if it was this one, I could maybe stage it differently. Hang on, I want more space. And then you have this landscape, the chalk downs at St Ives, floating in a room but it's got a kind of caption. If I turn it upside down, it's called the ballroom. So suddenly that changes maybe what you think you're looking at. And I really like all these little details of the topography and the layout, and I always just enjoy those. Have we got time to do another one?
Come up with a title for that then, Abigail?
If I was going to title this,
yeah,
I very often just stick with what I've got already, the caption. So maybe I'd call this St Ives. Maybe if I went to St Ives, I would feel like, and if I went there now, having made this work, maybe I'd feel like it was sort of upside down and spinning round. I really like this part here. It's just, I just think it for me, that's working really well. Yeah. So I think titling and those kinds of things, I've got, let's try a similar thing with this very different image. This is Millersdale in the Peak District. It's a photograph taken on a snowy day. I've got my two books. So let me take this out and see, we could have a little adventure with this one as well.
And where do you get your books from, Abigail? How can you get 3 copies of this book?
Well, now we're really lucky because I tend to, when I look for books, the first copy I always have to find myself because I don't know if I'll like it. So I don't buy books online unless I've seen it. And I've spent a long time going around secondhand bookshops. There's this amazing town in Hay-on-Wye, it's called, which is a town that's almost entirely secondhand bookshops. It's completely astonishing. the biggest one is Booth's Books. It's just amazing. It's up in the Black Mountains and just secondhand books. So I might go there for the day and happily wander about, or charity shops. Every time I go past somewhere that might have a book, that might have images that I might like, I just stop off and have a little browse. And then if you found a book once, you know so this book I'm using here, it's called The Face of England, which is a really nice title already, like a kind of portrait. And it'll tell me who published it. Look, this is an image of Cornwall on the front here. And then it's really easy. You just go to Aid Books, which is an online compendium of all the secondhand bookshops, and you type it all in and you'll find multiple copies of a book like this that would have been a very popular kind of mid-century book. Let's see, this is printed in 1952. This book isn't very popular anymore. It's not the kind of book people buy. So there's just so many copies out there. And then I just buy it again. I often do that because if I really... Sorry, Tim.
I was just going to, someone's just asked, well, said what probably lots of people think is that they don't like tearing pictures out of books. But what do you think about using magazines instead?
Yeah, I mean, that's great. Magazines feel a lot more disposable than books. I just don't happen to like magazine images very much. They don't speak to me. And I'm really aware that, yeah, it feels really cruel to take a page out of a book. In Hay-on-Wye, one of the bookshops doesn't even keep their books indoors. They're just outside in the rain, and you just put 10p in a box. So we're in this moment when actually the kind of books that I'm using are almost valueless in terms of today and what we think is worth spending money on. So I feel like I'm rescuing them. That's how I feel. I feel like these are books that nobody wants. This is a beautiful image that somebody's taken. I think it's beautiful. But nobody's going to look at it inside this book. You know, I paid £2.50 for this book. I think it's beautifully printed. The colour on it, I'm using this book. The reason I've got 10 copies of this book, so that I don't have to feel really stressed when I use a page, because I like them so much. But if I can bring this image into the world in a different way that somehow makes people want to look at it again, I feel like it's a little bit of a save. That's how I feel about it. So for me, I don't feel like I'm defacing these images. I feel like I'm working with them to bring them into a new dialogue. They're not just discarded.
Life as an artwork.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like they're no longer kind of discarded or just rotting in the rain outside the bookshops there, and nobody's buying them, and they're just pulping themselves in the rain. I feel like we can sort of continue to think about these images and continue to think about these books. I've only once contacted a photographer who took a photograph that I used and in a collage, and he was a press photographer, and it was so nice because he was really I'm just going to turn it upside down. I just did something really simple while we were talking. Sometimes it's really nice to talk and work at the same time, because you might find yourself doing something that just kind of works.
We'll keep asking questions if you don't mind as well, Abby.
Oh yeah, please go ahead.
Someone else has just asked, where did you go online? What's this website that you can buy these books from?
It's called, wait, I'm going to write it down. Let me just grab a pen. I'm just walking away, but I'm coming back. Oh, you probably can't see it.
I'll do it. What's that?
Abe Books.
ABE Books. Okay.
Abe Books, and it's all the it's like lots and lots of small secondhand bookshops just post their books up there, so it's the best. It's the quickest place to search. But as I say, I don't really go there unless I already know I want another copy of this book, because it's very personal, isn't it? I happen to really love this book, and that's why I've got 10 copies. But I've never been, the first book I showed you, the 1904 book, I've never been able to find that again. That's just, oh look, if I do that, there's a really nice thing where the tree is reflected in the water. Of course it is reflected in the water in the original photograph, but now, but maybe I'm gonna put it there. So yeah, but magazine images, newspaper images, just photographs that you take yourself. You know, you could just go out and just take photographs, or not even go out, you could just take photographs of anything that interests you, and then you can use collage to maybe bring out what it is that interests you about that object or that room or that space. And another thing you can do, which again I haven't done, but let's give it a try, is you could combine different places. So it so happens that I've torn this at a very similar angle to that. I mean, I love this book because I just think I'm always looking for structure in the photographs that I'm working with. So this has got this very strong diagonal. This has got a very strong horizontal line. But, you know, maybe I could find a way, I feel like there should be a way to bring these images together in some way, combine different places to bring out a different, well, maybe it's that, because that's the tear line, and this now talks to that. So maybe there's something there. I'll just put my notebook underneath it to pop it up.
While you're doing that, Abigail, what's the name of the book you're using? Joe's asking.
So Joe, this is called The Face of England. It just so happens that it's, you know, when I look at this image of Cornwall, the cliffs at Bude, I think that's the right colour. And I often find digital images too saturated, too contrasty, and they're a bit harsh. And I think this particular moment in printing is really something that I personally recognise. Like I'm actually standing here now, looking out of my window, and I feel like that is very close to what I can see out of the window. And I really like that. So yeah, I've got hundreds of guidebooks to England and London particularly, and it interests me, different styles of photography, different moments of photographic history where things were done differently. I'm just seeing whether, so here's Corfe Castle again. It looks like a kind of a model on this photograph, but look, it's beautiful the way these trees are just sitting there like this block, this rising block, and the rising ground here. So for me, I do appreciate, you know, and sometimes when I'm buying secondhand books, I don't tell the bookseller what I want them for because I think they might really judge me. But for me, it's just a way for me to get closer to the things that I really love, things that I just find really attract me, really interest me. I'm just putting this back because I really like this one. I think it's the colour that I like so much.
Actually,
that would be a good way to present because it's the right size.
Actually, that's a really good moment to ask this question from Barbara. It's a really interesting question, which is how do you frame these artworks when all the edges are irregular?
I feel like it's yeah, like this for me would be totally fine. So I feel like there's no rule that says you have to have even a rectangular frame. You know, things used to be often framed in oval frames. There's no need for the work. So if I was framing this, let's just give it a different, let's flip this. So I've got more of a kind of dark area so that you can see. So even here, it's part of the collage, isn't it? Like I could choose to place it like right here. And then it's kind of got a, can you see that? Okay, I feel like it's framed up a bit funny. It's got more of a space here, it's tight over here, or if I move it over to this side, maybe it's going to feel quite different. So you can also, with your framing, think about what else you want to have. So let's think, maybe if I put another image there, how does that work? Or maybe if I take these two images that I put onto, maybe if I turn them that way, so they're a bit suppressed, they could form a kind of background or another layer of meaning to sort of house this little flag-like double landscape. So maybe I could do something like that. Actually, why don't I, you know, since we're thinking about framing, I'm going to do, whoops, another thing. Sorry, my nail's a bit scratchy. and put it all up onto here. Maybe that can start be a way to frame this thing that I've done. Or I could make the houses look, actually, because this is nearly equal. This line meets this line, and this line meets this line. So that's another way I could do it, which is much less radically off than this.
And then would you surface mount them? I mean, how do you, if you were to go to a framer, how would you just ask them to frame your work usually?
The way I do it is I would back this onto another book page from the same book. Mm-hmm. So I would, looking at the back, I would back it on, I would stick this down, so I could do that right now. Although I'm a bit torn, I don't know whether to stick it here or whether to stick it here. But I would back it so it's got one solid piece of paper behind it. And then the framer would just take an archival tape and stick. Basically, I use archival tape. So the whole thing is done with archival tape if I'm doing it, because it's reversible and it won't go yellow and make the paper go yellow. Because if you've got a tape that's very acidic, over time, the glue will kind of discolor the paper. So I just use archival tape. I tend not to use, and once you've got a backing and it can't come through, then you can use PVA. So, and sometimes I back onto book cloth, not this kind of book cloth, not this kind of color, but something a bit more neutral, a bit more like the table that I'm working on. Or you can I've backed onto marble paper. You can just really experiment with, and I don't tend to or you could put a float mount around it, so it's in its own little tray. So they're the ways that I think about presenting a work when I've finished them.
And Abigail asked another interesting question, which is, are you tempted to use paints or draw marks on these works to add more of a personal touch?
I sometimes, in a certain type of my work, I put the years of the publication, of the years of the book on the front, but personally I never do. But I think it would be really interesting if you wanted to just keep going and add on and draw over, and that's another layer of imagination you can add. I think as an artist, I often feel like what I really like is the image. I really like these images, and I can get really lost in the details of them if it's an image that I like. And there's a lot of images that don't interest me, that I don't like, but if I really like it, I just want to get myself out of the way a bit. I don't want myself to be in the image very strongly, because I want it to be able to speak for itself. I just want to open a dialogue with it. I just want to have a conversation with it by working with it. And then I hope I can share that conversation that I've had with more people by showing it as a finished work. But in terms of myself, I honestly feel like I'm trying to get out of the way. And that's why I say I'm looking in the image for things that are already there. So in this image, what's already there is this very strong horizontal. So I kind of want to honor that. And then what I do will be going with that rather than strongly going against it, because that's what I find satisfying. But of course, every artist is different. Everybody's, reason why they create is really different. So it might be that would be the right route for you. It's just, for me, it's just about putting the image up front, not myself. I hope that makes sense.
It does. And we're actually coming up to about 2:45, Abigail. So that's kind of perfect timing. That was such an enjoyable 45 minutes. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I hope, from here, you could, everybody watching, thank you so much for joining me in my studio to do something that I really enjoy. This is sort of the middle of my practice. This is what I really enjoy. And you can just, from here, maybe go on a little adventure with images that you personally really like, rather than the ones that I've chosen. And just feel really free to change those images, print them on different paper. Something I didn't do, but you could do, is rescale them. So maybe you've got a bigger printout and a smaller one. There's so many things you can do. So I hope you enjoy collage moving forwards and can just take your own direction.
And before Natalie sort of sums up, we've had another question just asking how important is it to use less, not more cuts?
Yes, I usually find I quite enjoy going too far. So I maybe will build up and then I'll strip right back, because in the process of going too far and adding a lot, you quite often find what it was you wanted to say. So that's why I think it's really great to have plenty of copies, just print out plenty, and then you can really overload it and strip back, because yes, it's a bit like myself getting out of the way. Quite often a really minimal, if it's the right, if the cut is done in exactly the right place, it might be that it's better to just have one, because anything else will detract from that one really good decision. So that's what I do, but sometimes you don't know where is the right place to be unless you've gone too far.
Great.
Thank you, Abigail.
Well, thank you so much everyone for joining us, and thanks Abigail. That was such a, like Tim said, that was such an enjoyable 45 minutes. So next week we have a workshop with Andy Harper, and that's going to be painting sound, so completely different, and we really hope that you can join us for that. We're going to be sending a link around with the link to our online gallery, so as always, if you've had a go today or you do in the coming days, please upload your pictures and we'll be sharing those. So again, thank you to Abigail, thank you to Seasalt for making this series possible. We're going to also be sharing a link to all of the tutorials that you can watch on our YouTube page, so you can do this and many more. So again, yeah, thanks everyone for joining us, and we will see you next Thursday. Bye.